Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and welcome back. Today's topic is on art and design. Art and design is the cause or discourse of art and design is a remarkable one, and it is also a disputed one between scholars and artists of the preachers and practitioners from different frame of reference. So, to answer the question on this discussion on the similarities and the differences between art and design, I would like to frame my answers in the discussion on the base of art history, which is the different periods that has been given, periods and movement or artists in the movements given by art history and in cultural studies. And in cultural studies, I would focus on the culture and society as an important part, which acts as the content validity towards different periods, movement, and artists and artworks in art history. And the different societies that I will put in my frame starts from the five societies since the Prehistoric Age, which is the first one is the hunting and gathering society. The second one is the horticulture and pastoral society. The third one is the agriculture or agrarian society. The fourth one is the industrial or modern society. And the fifth one is the post-industrial or postmodern society. So it is important, and I see it as an important aspects in the developments of art and art history, the aspects of culture and society, in the story, and even in the theory of stigmagy, the importance of the material, which is culture, and also the spatial attributes or virtues of the environments, which is the society. And the art historian, the Hungarian and German art historian Arnold Hauser, he also remarks a reasonable remark on the importance of culture and society in art and art history. In his books, The Philosophy of Art History, he states that we are living in the day of a sociological interpretation of cultural achievements. This day will not last forever, and it will not have the last word, and which we see culture as static and dynamic, and as dynamic as it gets, the societies are advancing by respectives of different technologies, innovations, and achievements. So, which in respect, Hauser denotes the fundamental value of culture and society upon its significant zeitgeist or the heyday of its era. The zeitgeist is used by the philosopher, and which also puts history as one of the important aspects of culture and society, which is Hegel. And as in the favor of a principle of causality, which is really connected to the field or discipline of art history, where every event has a cause and conversely every cause has an event. And Hegel states that history unfolds in a series of dialectical opposition between the thesis, which is the dominant, and the antithesis, which is the non-dominant, that eventually resolves and resonates to achieve a deeper synthesis, or what he calls as the zeitgeist of its time, or the freedom of its time, or the beauty of its time. And he sees arts as one of that beauty, and I talk about art and also design as the freedom imperative at my previous talk. So what we can see here is that using the frame to answer the discussion on the base of art history, and merging the disciplines and field of art history and cultural studies, I see the merging of both field or discipline are in utmost priority in regards of their respective strengths as well as weaknesses, which I equally believe both are important to portray a complete picture frame regarding the important questions on art and design. So, art and design is a process, is a human process. Art and design is the practice of freedom in humankind. As a humankind, it's morally and ethically to achieve freedom. It's embedded as a natural element, essential element for humankind. From the maker to the viewer, the freedom to make, the freedom to view any experience as a reaction and response in sort of a human to human interactions. And per se, let's see it in one way, everyone is an artist and everyone is a designer. Pablo Picasso said that every child is an artist. The problem is how to remain an artist once he or she grows up, which states and shows that everyone has the ability and capability of a creative imagination to make art and to design. And even John Berger, an English art critic, in his book Ways of Seeing, states that seeing comes before words, and the child looks and recognizes before it can speak, which is important in our discussion, because from the society level, I will start with the hunting and gathering society and the horticulture and pastoral societies, which is a part of the prehistoric age. So in the prehistoric age, we can see that there's no writings, there's no, perhaps there is language, but there's no write-ups or evidence of writing that we can see. But even if there's no aspects of that linguistic aspects of words and writings, there's also that aspects of the iconic aspect or the image or the visual element of image that we can see. So let's see how the difference between art and design happens. So art expresses the reaction and the response of an experience, ideas, object, or event in the form of an artwork. This expression process is a freedom of the artist in creating meanings which resonates in a human process of intertwining or interplay of intended and actual message the artist meant to portray and did portray. This process is, as what Hegel said, that interplay between what is dominant and what is non-dominant. The way you put your priority on your culture and society is much more important, rather than it's much more important or is an important aspect or the fundamental aspects of any thoughts, beliefs, and feelings that you portray. As for example, in the slide, you can see the artwork of the first artwork, which is from the left, is the Lion Man. The second artwork is the Halls of Bulls in Lascaux in France. So the Lion Man actually depicts the belief of the culture, the beliefs in the culture, which is the people in the prehistoric age. Their belief were the beliefs in animism, pantheism. The belief in animism, where animism is a belief that every object around us, whether it's an object, it's organic or non-organic, it's the trees or the animals, they each and every objects or material in a culture which is organic or non-organic has their own spirit, and they value this spirit. And you can see that in the painting of the lion man, even the man is been the portrayal of a lion, a cave lion, and also with the body of a man, which is very anthropomorphic, more to the human side. And it shows that how human makes sense out of themselves and the reality around us, which supersedes, which the ideas of the intended and the actual message of culture and society produce an artwork such as this artwork, which is in the left, the Lion Man. And in the right is an artwork of the holes of bulls, drawing at that time using the materials and the cultures and portraying the society at that time. What was more important, it was a hunting series. The animals that they used to hunt, the bulls, the ox, the horse. So these were important elements and aspects of their societies which predominate, which is the synthesis, as what Hegel mentioned, which supersedes that freedom. And to draw and to portray an artwork in three-dimensional as this small sculpture, which is 31 cm, the lion, and this big wall cave painting artwork is the halls of bulls is an achievement. It's an achievement not only on that culture and society, but a part of the whole evolution and revolution of humankind. So prevailingly, art acts as a process of freedom, a freedom imperative. That freedom imperative, which only exists in the humankind, or in the science, which is extra utile, which exists in all humankind and which is not practiced as much as the artist. There's a reason why I state that it is not practiced as much as the artist. This is because in art and design, the design part applies the reaction and response of an experience, which is ideas, objects, and event, because we are human and we make sense of everything around us in the form of design. This application is a selective process which appears in the form of the service of the designer in producing meanings which resonates in a human process of an intertwine and interplay of the client's brief. So we can see when we say it's a service, it's from a client brief. There's a specific client, and then there's a specific client, there's a specific audience, there's that intention of that intended message of the client, and the actual message the designer applies on the design using linguistic linguistic words, or using iconic image, as the story in the Prehistoric Age is the iconic image or symbols, as we can see, the visual elements. So this supports that even since the Prehistoric Age, art and design exists. Art exists as a form of imperative freedom, and also design exists as a selective and also survival imperative, as you can see on visual communication, the survival of the community, the survival of the species, of the bands in Paleolithic. How they survive was by conveying selective signs, or by conveying survival imperative, which was the drawing, acts as the sustenance of the community and societies in whatever culture, material or non-material culture that they had at that time. So design were predominant or most dominant in the economical age of supply and demand, which was the industrial age. So the evidence of design exists as visual communications or design communication since the Prehistoric Age, but it was more dominant in the age of industrial, because in the age of the Industrial Revolution and after that age, they were in the second wave of the Industrial Revolution was the mass production, and these mass production produced mass consumerism, people who consume the design of the product. So design were predominant, and in a culture of commodity and consumerism, where not only the designer is selective at choice, but the potential buyer is as selective in consuming his or her choice, which results in in new aspects of marketing and advertising after the industrial age. So the people who consume the item does not look on the product itself, but looks on the quality, or what is the proposition, what are the appeals that have been given to them, so that they can choose one product from another, which is the best product. There comes, after that, industrial revolution and mass production, and the commodity community, and also after the consumerism society or culture, then exists the marketing and advertising. Thus, the service and selective side of design is seen as a survival imperative, as to be very selective. So you can see this, the artworks can be seen, and this continues from the prehistoric age, between the art and design. So on my left side of the image is the Lion Man. The Lion Man was found in the cave in southern Germany in 1939. And then the Lion Man was found, was believed, and it's to be exist since the circa 30,000 BC. And then there were archaeologists who believe that it was also an art form, which a material culture or an artifact that exists since the Ice Age, because the material of the Lion Man was been done by the ivory of a mammoth, which exists since the Ice Age. The size of the Lion Man is 31 centimeters tall, and it's a portrayal of a head of a cave lion, partly human body, and it's known as the oldest known form of a head of a human, or a being which does not exist in physical form, but symbolizes ideas of the supernatural, which is embedded in the religious of the people at that time, of the culture and society at that time, which is animism. It was made from the mammoth ivory. Then on my right is the halls of bulls, which is found in the Lascaux cave in the southwestern France in 1940, and it was believed being done since circa 15,000 BC. And the people at that time, they used charcoal from the fire and earth pigments, or the natural available resources. As example, bloods from the animal, the earth ochre color, the pigments sometimes being mashed out with animal fat and being applied as a symbol, a freedom imperative. And I see it both as important as art, as important as also as design, the freedom to express the artwork, and the freedom to select, or the survival imperative to select what is important for that culture and society, what type of drawing, what type of material, what communicate. So since the prehistoric age, art and design exists both. Visual communication exists, and the imperative of art also exists. And let's look forward to the classical Greek age. So this is the period which is after the prehistoric. We see cradles of civilization, the Mesopotamian civilization, the Egyptian civilization, and we see early writings, hieroglyph and other more writings, and we see tablets in the Mesopotamian since the Sumerian Mesopotamian. You see the standard of the Ur, or you see writings in one of the earliest tablets of the first law, which is the Code of Hammurabi, 282 codes of Hammurabi. You see communications of people, and you see a lot of civilization. So this happened after the prehistoric age, the advancements of humanity after the Bronze Age and the Iron Age. So until the classical Greek age was being epitomized as one of the classical ages. So as we can see in the classical ages of the Greek, it puts itself in cultural studies or in sociology sociology as the third part of society, which is the agrarian society, which is more advanced than the hunting and gathering and horticulture and horticulture and pastoral society. So you think during the agrarian society, we can see that the advancements of humans in politics, in economic, and in social, and is more focused on the social part, as people have powers, people have their own places, their countries, and their cities. They have their own civilization, kingdoms, territories, and also their own cities. Then they don't much focus on and then the economical side of the surplus of the productions and the surplus of foods and abundance resources, which results on a different trade. So you can see that the social process or mobility of the social process is not just stagnant, or not just in one area, focus in one area, but the trans process of economy, the trans process of political understanding, knowledge, and also social process comes from the communication and trades of different areas and region. And Greek has been praised as one of the importance and prominence one. So if you see in this slide, there's two, art and design. We can say the art and design to produce the Parthenon. The Parthenon was an important temple, significant temple, the hallmark of the city of Athens. Athens was a state, and in the state there was the Acropolis, which was the highest top area, which were very significant and acts as a hallmark, a remarkable area. And they situated a temple, which is the Parthenon, and inside the temple, it housed, or it was inside that the temple was the statue of the goddess Athena. The beliefs were still the Greeks had a pagan belief of multiple gods, which could be related to the part of animism, but in a different part of perspective, which is the pagan belief of there are different gods which control different parts of the human process and life aspects. So the Athena temple was being constructed for the goddess of Athena, as seen in the right image of the slide. In the center point, in the center area, was the goddess of Athena, which was the goddess of wisdom, which is just the goddess of art, and the goddess of literature, and also war. And you can see one of the hands of Athena, which is on, if I'm not mistaken, on the right, is holding the goddess of Nike. So Nike was the goddess of victory. And to construct such beautiful and remarkable achievement, humankind achievement, was that exists until today. I mean, the Parthenon, the parts of the Parthenon, was by using the skills of both artists and also, we can say, designers. So that time were architects, the people who are very concerned on the selective process or the survival imperative of a design. So it was done in circa 400 BC, and it was been asked. It was the Pericles. Pericles was a famous Greek statesman. He ordered the construction of the hallmark. He ordered the construction of the Parthenon as one of a hallmark symbol of Athens at the Acropolis, and a symbol of Athens. So art and design itself was a symbol of freedom, the freedom imperative, or a symbol of honor, the symbol of pride, the symbol of dignity of an area. So Pericles commissioned the renowned Greek architect, which is Echinus, and also Callicrates, to make the construction of the Parthenon as architects, and also the sculpture Phidias, which is an artist at that time. To not only the design was a part of the design team of the Parthenon, but also played as an important role for the development of that sculpture of Athena. At that time was a beautiful sculpture. Some believe it was made from wood, others believe from marble, and we believe that it was been coated by gold and all to symbolize the freedom of the Athens, the people of the Athens, the citizens of the Athens at that time, were where they celebrated the political, economical, and social freedom of the people at that time. So the pagan gods of the Greeks, of the Greek mythology. So these aspects, this age or part of the classical Greek, and example of the artworks or the construction of the Parthenon, shows how artists are also considered as not only artists but also at times supervise constructions of designs or architectural construct, which we can see in the supporting in the other slide, the next slide, which is in the Renaissance. So since the Renaissance, if we can say that the prehistoric age, there were no writings, then there were no evidence. So since the Renaissance, the discipline of art history was to be developed by Giorgio Vasari when he wrote the Renaissance, or the rebirth of the classical Greek. Renaissance humanism, on humanity, on freedom, on the focus on the freedom of the human mind, to see what is right and what is wrong from their aspect. So Giorgio Vasari wrote the lives of the artists in the 1500, somewhere in the 1500, and he marked about different artists. He marked about the cycles of artists, the cycle of art, and different artists, dominant artists at that time, which was Michelangelo, Leonardo da Vinci, Donatello, and he also marked on the connoisseurship of what is good, what is best, and what is better. And he marks that the artists from the late from the high and the late medieval, which is Cimabue and Masaccio, as being the good and the best, and putting Michelangelo as the better or the best of his time, the best contemporary artist at his time. And he wrote about artists of the past and contemporary, and what is viewed on the artists, the portfolios of the artists. So he is an art. His approach is an art historian approach, and at times he was also viewed as a father of art history. Okay, by some aspects. Okay, so from this slide of the Renaissance, we can see that these both artworks will be done by Michelangelo, and David Michelangelo. What's amazing about both artwork is that Michelangelo was a sculptor, and he was also a painter. He was also an architect. He was quite a genius. Reasonably, we can say a genius, and we saw that being a genius in Renaissance shows that there were not much of limits of being human. Humans could do a lot of things. Leonardo da Vinci made the paintings. He connected arts and science as one, and he applied, and he was remarked as one of the geniuses who applied both. It shows that the freedom of the humankind, there were not much of a distinction, and from this part of the aspects, we see that the artist at times is also a designer when he is asked to construct architects or temple on a lot of things. Okay, so on my right side is the sculpture of David, been done by Michelangelo. He came back to Florence, and that time Florence were flourishing with the ideas of Renaissance humanism, and he was asked to make the art of David. And as we can see, This is the art of the David made by marble, and what's important or what's significant that we can see, it was made from the Carrara marble, the Carrara marble. So the Carrara marble was one of a kind of a material, as we discussed how art evolves around culture and society. Culture as per se could be the materials used, whether the physical materials, and the society was put upon what was the spatial attributes of the environment, or what was at that time important as a priority. And it seems that in the Renaissance, one of that priority was about religion, religions, arts, and science. And it was being done in 1504. And after that, when he came back to Rome, he was asked by Pope Julius II. Pope Julius II asked him, or commissioned him, to make his tomb, and the job was in 1505, 1 year after the David sculpture, the remarkable David sculpture. And he started doing the artwork in 1508 and finishing it 4 years until 15 was open to the public in 1512 or 1513. So what was important on this process is that Michelangelo was given a task, which is, the task was to not only be an artist, to make sculptures and painting of the remarkable Sistine Chapel. As you can see in the left has been made by Michelangelo. It took him 5 years to finish that Sistine Chapel, and it was a painting from the book of Genealogy or Genesis. And there was a barrel vault, the Sistine Chapel in the Vatican, and he was being asked to make the artwork. Was an amazing artwork. But what was more amazing was that Michelangelo was given a task to not only be a designer, to create sculpture and painting, fresco painting, but also were being given a task to be a designer or an architect, to construct a tomb. And there was some rendering on the ideas and concept that Michelangelo proposed, which eventually what was left was the Sistine Chapel and some of the artworks that were seen inside of that. But after the Renaissance, since the modern art, however, these distinctions of the freedom imperative and the survival imperative, between what is the selection and between what is art as a freedom itself, or before that, in the Age of Enlightenment, talks about aesthetics being in the Age of Enlightenment being brought back after religion, because what was more prominent before the French Revolution, the power of the aristocrat, the patrons of the aristocrat and the patrons of the church. After the French Revolution, they were thrown, and they were becoming less and less powerful. And the more powerful age of the middle class, the mercantilists, the capitalists, and these people, they had their own views and ideas on what was aesthetically beautiful. So new theories and emerging theories of aesthetic, as one of them has been pioneered by Kant, had developed the different aesthetic judgment and different ways to talk about aesthetics. So, however, these distinctions of art and design were brought into hard distinction, or been done in a blurred line, when Marcel Duchamp is an artist, produced his ready-mades of the fountain on the right side, and then after that the bottle rack and the bicycle wheel. So the bicycle wheel was done in 1913. The bottle rack was being done in 1914, and the fountain was made in 1917. So what Marcel Duchamp said was one of the talk or interview in 1914, after he finished his bottle rack, he said that it was a process of a selection rather than trusting what he thought was right or reasonably right. So in this part of design, it can be seen that art itself is moving towards design, which is very selective, rather than using the minds of the artist and having that interplay between purpose and pleasure of what should be aesthetically pleasing and not by Kant and other theories and other scholars of understanding on aesthetics. It was a blurred line being started by Marcel Duchamp, which would be much more serious, which would be much more serious after the contemporary ages. Okay, so if we can see from the artworks, the bottle rack, the bicycle, and the wheel, where his artworks exemplified that selection perhaps was also a process of art. Selection was not just a process of design, but perhaps it was also a process of art, where the freedom to select is as good as the freedom to produce such artwork on the basis of logics and reasons in aesthetics, which he called it as an anesthesia, or the states of anesthetics. So it was between the play between statics and anesthetics. So what was right and what was wrong was actually the merging of both, which was quite creative. This is why you see the artworks of the bicycle wheel was very significant since 1913. It was a strong statement of a bicycle wheel, which was very dynamic in the movement aspects, and stool itself, which is very static. So he wants to combine that part of aesthetics and anesthetics, and he focused more on that anesthetics, between the chance and selections of chance and also select. These extensions of superiority between the freedom imperative and the survival imperative was at the verge of blurred lines on distinctions on the age of contemporary art, where the pragmatic theory of truth was superior. The pragmatic theory of truth was what works. It was more important than what was right and what was wrong, because that time in his artworks were before the First World War, and there were actually coalition and a lot of mass in the society, problems and all. So he saw that, and if you say on the pragmatic theory, it was not just like what was right and what was wrong. What works were more important. It's not about what was the dominant culture, the dominant race, the dominant society, the dominant race, the gender, or even religion, or even territory. It was about what works were more important, and sometimes being happy or being very nihilistic would be much more important. As these people, they met at Swiss in the First World War with a lot of the Voltaire, if I'm not mistaken, one of the cabaret, and there were lots of people who ran out, who fled out from the war area, from different nations at that time. So it was a movement of, regardless of gender, regardless of race, regardless of ethnicity, regardless of religion, regardless of everything. It was a movement on pragmatic, on what works, and it was seen in the artwork itself. As the urinal, bowl, what works as an artist, what works as an art. There's no distinction between an artwork should be a painting and then the sign. And it also makes that you can also select an artwork from a bowl, a ready-made bowl being done, and then just sign it. Because at the end of the day, what works? It doesn't matter if it's a white cat or a black cat, as long as it catches that mouse. And what is the utmost important is freedom itself, freedom of humanity, freedom of the humankind. And when there's so much war and everything between which is the better race, which is the better religion, which is the better system of political, economical, social, and belief system, ideologies, fascism, then if you look on that part, then you won't see that freedom part. If you select too much black cat in favoring, or if you select too much white cats in favoring of white cats rather than black cats, then you might not find the best cat. You can actually catch the mouse. So it's a process of that selections that he puts it there. So the theory of the pragmatic theory of truth were superior than both the freedom and the survival of art on the favor of what was encountered by the viewer of the mass. And this can be seen in at the late modern art, been put by art historians, or by the works of Andy Warhol, the Campbell Soup. Three of these artworks had been done. The series of three of these artwork was been done by the same artist and been done by the same year, which is 1962, which is after the post-war. So at times people will put it as the contemporary art or postmodern art, or at times people also put it as, some historian will put it as the late or the last movement of the modern art. But what I see it is as the society that it is in a society of a modern and also a postmodern society, industrial and post-industrial society, because in the artworks of Andy Warhol, what was encountered by the viewer, the pragmatic theory of truth was superior than both the freedom and survival of art. There was quite a blurred distinction between art and design, and the favor of pragmatic on what works, of what was encountered by the viewer of the mass. I mean, it was not important what was right to be an art subject and what was wrong to be an art subject. It was actually about the subject that were very connected to the mass, because the mass were actually much more stronger than both. After the French Revolution and since the Industrial Revolution, the age of capitalism, they give rebirth to the commodity community and also consumers and culture of consumerism, as we can see. And in the artworks of Andy Warhol, the Campbell Soup, the Coke, and Marilyn Monroe, it was being seen as a part of a commodity. People, objects, artworks was being seen as a part of commodity, and was being seen as a choice of the mass, and more other, which exemplifies art in the age of high consumerism, where the truth does not matter. What matters is what people believe. The truth does not prevail. What unveils are what works in the free play selection of the viewer, which is the culture and society. Thus you see art moving towards a shift of inclusiveness rather than exclusiveness. Before this, art was more on the subjects of exclusivity of what was right and what was wrong, but this time it saw art as more inclusiveness of the whole community, whole society celebrating, rather than exclusiveness like before, in favoring of the pragmatic theory of truth and what works for the public. This was evidently been seen in public art. For example, a lot of public art where the art is experienced in an open public realm, which at times is site-specific. So answering to the space and society around it, art as favoring the view of the public can be seen in the work of the contemporary art. The choices they evokes the viewers in attaining interaction between the art and the audience in the conceptual art. So and Andy Warhol was brilliant. It was made at the same year in a modern and postmodern society, you could say that, and by the same artist, and also using the same medium, which was screen printing. And why did he use screen printing? He wanted to he wanted to make a remark on the mass production. It was an age of mass production, and what matters was what the people believe, what the consumer believe at mass, and also to show that mass culture been put on society. Hollywood, the age of culture of Coca-Cola. Coke was more popular. I mean, people around the world, some parts of Africa would know what Coke is and might not know what Jesus Christ was. I mean, these cultures and commodity, they dominate a lot of sectors in the political, economical, and also the social, and also the belief of the society and the culture around the world. And as you can see, art as favoring the viewer of the public can be seen in artwork of the contemporary art, and the choices they evoke in the viewer in attaining interactions between the art and the audience in conceptual art. So it's actually the free play of the artist has been transferred into a equal understanding between the free play and freedom of the artist been made, with the freedom of also the viewer, what he or she wants to understand about that art. So the choices they evoke an audience in the conceptual art of, as example, the artwork of Joseph Kosuth and his installation. As we know, in contemporary art, they are prominently in modern art. There were artworks will be done in a lot of representational, non-representational concept and abstract artwork of painting, sculptures, and printmaking. But in contemporary, it was very predominant on to see artworks of conceptual art like this one, installation also like this one, video art, happenings and performance art. Art was more exclusive. Arts was more inclusive to everyone, and the audience gained attractions and connection with the artwork. And the interplay of ideas of the artwork was not just been given on part of the artist, reserved for the artist, but also for the audience and the viewers who see it. There's an interplay, and this interplay is very evident in how the viewer sees. So the intervening installation capturing indoor or outdoor space of installation art, remarking huge statements to the experience by the viewer, performance art and happenings where the viewer can not only experience the subject on the whole ideas, material, and the ideas, material, event of the artwork, but also everything. Video art, where viewers experience multiple still image and motion of videos and settings of music to experience like never before. So what Joseph Kosuth puts it as arts, craft and design, arts, photography and linguistic. He tries to blur that distinction between art and design, and between even photography, even designs, and even the object itself. As he puts, as the name of the artwork is One and Three Chairs by Joseph Kosuth in 1965. So in the whole installation, you can see there's that linguistic aspects of the chair, which is the linguistic definition of the words of definitions of what is actually a chair. And there's on the other side, there's that image, or the iconic image of the chair being photographed, which is also a chair. And another one is the material object, physical object of the chair itself, and it made an interplay to the audience, which were more dominant to be seen as a chair. Is it a photograph of the chair? Is it the idea of that chair, as in linguistic, or is it the image of that chair, or is it the chair itself, or both of them? All of them are equally important. When you say all of them are equally important because they are the ideas of a chair, and then you're talking about conceptual art, and the installation evokes and revokes that are parts of your thoughts, your thoughts and emotions, and also your feelings towards the idea of that chair. And it's also trying to create a distinction that arts and design, there's not much of design distinction between the freedom to express and the freedom to select, as is both are actually the ideas of freedom. The freedom imperative is as important as the selecting or survival imperative. So these are the works of the contemporaries that blurred the lines of art and design, as you can see, especially in art. And so the last one that I would like to show is an artwork by by Tobias Rehberger in 2009. So he's a German artist, a contemporary artist, and he makes a lot of installations. And his installations were very famous, as he was awarded by, and his installation were put in the 50th and the 53rd Venice Biennale, and he won on the 53rd Venice Biennale. He was awarded the Golden Lion for his installation. For this installation, such installation, which is Everything You Love Makes You Cry. Everything You Love Makes You Cry. And this installation is not just an installation of art, but it's also a functional installation. If you still remember one of my talks, I mentioned about David Jones as an artist and also a writer. He states that humans have this two important behavior characteristic, which is the use and which is the science. And he puts it as the use, which I see it as the use is very instrumental, which is very selective, very survival kind of mode, imperative, which is using people as means and ends, as what Kant said. So that one was that part of the use, and there's another part of the science. The science was, he called it as an extra utile of science and symbol, and we say if an extra utile is a part of the freedom imperative of how we see art as a pride, how we see art as dignity, and how art brings honor or shame towards a certain object which is not experienced and it is not interested or valued by the animal species rather than the human species. But if you see an artwork by Tobias Rehberger, as evidently, and you can fairly said that art is as potent as design, because the installation is an installation, and at that time and a certain point of time, that installation is also useful. When I say it's useful, that you can see on the right side of the picture, it's actually being used as a part of a restaurant, and people are sitting and using, and people are interacting with the artworks and using it. So there's a big and blurred distinction between art and design. And at times in Hong Kong, he released some of his collections, and he made the art even as a collection. As example, some of the artists, like sculpture artists like Henry Moore, he made a big sculpture, and he made a limited edition sculpture of the miniature sculpture or small sculpture, a mini size. So they make it into collection, and when you see it as a collection, it's actually a selective or a survival imperative. It's a selections of idea intended from one part of the maker towards another part of the user. Whatever type of thing you use, it's still a use. Okay, so I would like to end all of this discussion with the importance on art and design. We can see a lot of differences starting from a lot of developments of discourses being made, and as in art and as in design, seeing that part of the aesthetic part of art, that expression part of art, and seeing that selective or application parts of design, using ideas, thoughts, and using ideas, objects, and events. So we see that distinction in the differences from the early stage and after the evolvement through culture and society. And even in art history, the age of art history of modern art and contemporary art, we see that that distinction has been more on a blurred distinction line. You see more of a similarity. What was more important and evidently important was the freedom imperative. the freedom to say that art is as same as design and design is as equally important as art is one of the important aspects that I see in this overall discussion. So art seeks for the freedom imperative of the maker and the viewer, and artist and audience, rather than being useful and instrumental, was one of the earliest idea which I believe is not applies when you see that the idea to use something as a use and instrumental part of an object or an artwork is as same as important as an artwork without any useful instrumental aspect, as in Tobias Rehberger's artwork. It's useful and it's also an installation, it's an art and it sells. What's more important in the contemporary world is what is believed by people and what works and what functions. That, if you ask me, there are differences and there are similarities, and we can see them in a bigger picture with their respective weaknesses and strength. But I would go rather on celebrating both art and design as a freedom imperative, and I would like to blur that distinction on a more inclusive level of a more information society, of a more post modernism society of art itself, as in the writings of a lot of scholars, Martin Heidegger, Derrida, writings of Nietzsche, and other more artworks that been wrote, other more philosophers that wrote about art. So that I end my discussion today with and my discussion today with a statement by Kant in his early major works in the Critics of Pure Reason, which nature does not volunteer any information about herself. What happens is that we put nature on the rack and force her to answer our questions. So everything happening in this world is more on our perspective level of how we see the representational system, the way we make sense of our social structure system, and the way we comprehend and apprehend that knowledge. So I believe this is a fair insight from me. At the same time, I believe there's also other reasonable and also fair insights from other scholars and practitioners or artists. Okay, Assalamu alaikum. Thank you.